Hello, this is Vikas. I am the author of the book Waiting to Breathe. It was published in 2024. The book is a fictional autobiography. It has some aspects of my life, but most of the stories, situations, and characters are fictional. But the essence of the journey is very similar to mine. The story is of an individual called Aryan Nazrani. He is an Iraqi of Kurdish background. He was a refugee who came to America after 1988 Halabja chemical attack. He came to the US with his uncle, who is his only living relative. Aryan was a motivated and driven person, and because of that, he ended up climbing the corporate ladder and became the Chief Technology Officer at Artifact, which is a mid-sized tech company. As he climbed his career ladder, he became more and more distant with his uncle, and he has surpassed all the material goal he had set for himself, yet he finds no peace. So the book begins with his existential angst. So I'm going to read that part out for you. So this is after he just had a call with his uncle, and he's been dreading this call because he hasn't spoken to his uncle in a while and they've been drifting apart. So it goes. The call went well. I breathed a sigh of relief. Why was I dreading this call so much? We carry so much emotional baggage of the past and bury it deep in our consciousness. We find every excuse possible to avoid inspecting this baggage. Any trigger that brings it to the forefront causes a flood of emotional pain. Uncle Masood and I have a complicated history, and a part of me wants to forget that. While I have tried hard to become Ari, he reminds me that I am still that little boy, Aryan, that nobody wanted to sit with in the class. Being uprooted at an impressionable age has caused a rip in my psyche that is hard to heal. I feel pulled apart by the two worlds that cannot reconcile. I'm getting distant, not just with my uncle, but with everyone, including my wife. I am so distracted all the time that I am unable to feel anything fully. I feel ashamed and guilty that my relationship with my wife did not live up to the promise it had when we decided to marry. So this paragraph really explains the existential angst he has, that he's distracted all the time, he has no inner peace, and through these distractions, he tries to escape the feeling of being unfulfilled, of being incomplete. So, after talking to his uncle, Aryan meets him over the lunch. During the lunch, uncle tells him that he only has 6 months at most to live because he has stage 4 cancer. And he has decided not to seek any medical intervention, but he wants to spend those 6 months in what he calls truly living. And Aryan does not like this. He argues with his uncle that he should not seek an excuse to die, but instead seek medical intervention. And this argument leads to a dispute between them, and Aryan walks out of the meeting angrily. But he repents his behavior and goes back to meet his uncle. And there, the uncle explains what he means by he wants to spend rest of his time truly living. And this really moves Aryan. And Aryan is also facing a dilemma at his own workplace where his own values are in direct contradiction to the values of the company that he works for. And he is being forced to do something that he does not want to do. that his conscience don't allow him to do. And tears start coming out of his eyes. So the uncle asks him, "Dear, is something bothering you?" And to this, Aryan responds, and I'm going to read something from the book. "I look at you and feel I am wasting my life," I said. Uncle said, "Don't think like that. We all have our parts to play in this world. I am playing mine and you should play yours." "What part is that, Uncle?" I asked with despair. "I cannot tell you that, nor can this world. If you quiet your mind, you will be able to hear your heart. Then it'll become clear to you," he said. "I try, but I hear nothing. I run from pole to pole, but see no direction for my life. Each day is like the one before. It's like I'm living in a loop. Life is a slow poison that I drink every day and die a little every day. When I'm with people, I put on this mask of a happy and successful man. I am fake, and I'm surrounded by fake people," I said with self-disgust. And this is how Aryan is able to open up to his uncle. And then uncle asks him, "What is bothering you?" So Aryan explains his situation to uncle. And then uncle tells him stories from his past when he was a child in Iraq that Aryan has forgotten. And that gives Aryan a perspective on life, that life is much bigger than the current problem at hand. And if we took a step back and see this wider perspective, we can always find the path forward. And Aryan does that. He finds a path forward. So Aryan decides to follow his heart and do the right thing. He takes actions as per his own values, and as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. He is fired from his company. Initially, he did not know how to react, but as time passes, he descends into depression. And when he's feeling very down, he goes and visits his uncle and has a very meaningful conversation with him. So I'm going to read something from the book. So uncle says to Aryan about his own state of mind. "I wasted my entire life chasing empty pleasures and numbing my mind to dull the pain. Since that unfortunate night of attack, you became the mission of my life. You have shown gratitude towards me so many times for saving your life, but it is you who saved me. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stop minimizing yourself. Once you're out of this self-pity loop, you can think clearly," uncle said. I had no words to say. He was not the same man I knew. He was not a religious fundamentalist. He had become so wise and humble. Life humbles us all. Maybe I needed to be humbled as well. Despite all the challenges I faced, life didn't owe me anything. How presumptuous of me to demand the universe to adjust itself according to my wishes. Here I was, refusing to carry on because I felt wronged. So, uncle basically is saying that even though you think that I saved your life, but indeed it was you who saved my life. I was just killing myself by numbing my mind, chasing empty pleasures. But you gave me a purpose. The purpose is to serve God's children. And it is the same mission towards which the uncle wants to dedicate rest of his life. He wants to save two Yazidi women who are in the captivity of militants in Syria. He wants to rescue them by paying the ransom and earn their freedom. So he doesn't want to spend time in hospitals, going through treatment, going through battery of tests. He wants to use every last breath he has in saving these women. So as the conversation between Uncle and Aryan continues, Uncle tells him the story about the time when the attack actually happened. So I'm going to read something from the book. There are some parts I never told you. I was at the shop when the gas was released. I had 2 masks at the shop. I was paranoid, so whenever Saddam's people attacked, I wore a gas mask. Yes, people made fun of me, but I didn't care. That day too, I wore a mask. Pretty soon it became clear to me that my paranoia was justified this time. I grabbed the other mask and ran towards the house. I found your mother and you in the basement. Your mother and I put the second mask on you. I took out my mask to put on your mother, but she asked me to keep it on and take you away from the town as soon as possible and as far as possible. I begged her to wear the mask repeatedly, but she declined. Time was running out, so I picked you up, put you in my van, and drove off. I could not even attend your mother's funeral because it was too dangerous for the brother and son of Asad Nazrani to be in Iraq. To this day, I cannot forget the look in your mother's eyes. That day changed my life forever. You survived one of the worst chemical attacks in human history. Then you survived cancer. You are still here. You survived. There must be a reason and a purpose that God has for you. You're not worthless. You need to find that purpose and fill it. So the attack that is being referred here is 1988 Halabja chemical attack. And Uncle Masood wanted Aryan and his mother to live on. And he wanted to put the mask on the mother. But she declined. Because even if she survived with Aryan, she may not be able to take him out of Iraq safely. And her last hope was that Masood might be able to take Aryan out of Iraq. So she sacrificed her own life to save her son's life. And that's why that event is so profound in the memories of Asad, of Masood and Aryan. So Aryan starts spending more and more time with his uncle. In the meantime, he gets an opportunity to work as a consultant with the company he had worked in the past, with the manager that he had worked in the past. And in one of those conversations with Uncle, he really discovers the meaning of life. So I'm going to be reading something from the book about that. So in one of the conversations, Aryan shows sort of pity on Uncle, that Uncle is going to die, and he expresses regret on that. And this is Uncle's response. My situation is no different from anyone else's. There is a disease which is eating everyone from inside and bringing them closer to death every day. For me, each day is harder than the one before, and so it is for everyone else. The only difference is the timeline. I'm dying on an expedited timeline. I do have one advantage though, because I know I have such short time left. I can start to live my life. Most people keep postponing living their lives, thinking they have plenty of time. And then one day, the time runs out and they die without having lived, Uncle said with passion. What do you mean most people don't really live? I asked. Right now, billions of people are distracting themselves with trivial entertainment, fighting over petty issues, harboring resentment towards their loved ones. Does any of this matter? If they found out that they were going to die within 3 months, they would live their lives very differently, he said. That still leaves the question, how does one live? I asked. Before we discuss how one lives, do you know when one lives? Uncle asked. What do you mean, when one lives? I was surprised that the simple question stumped me. Is there a specific time in the day when you live? No, I replied. Exactly. We live all the time. We can practice the art of living in every action we perform. I had this realization during the last Ramadan. I was breaking my fast with dates. I picked up a date and put it in my mouth. And after 16 hours of fast, it tasted amazing. While I was chewing this date, I picked up another one and was ready to put it in my mouth. I asked myself why I was putting the second date in my mouth, why I still was not done with the first one. The act of bringing the date to my mouth seemed more pleasurable to me than eating the date in my mouth. Then I realized that this is how we live our lives. Instead of enjoying and being grateful for what we have, our minds are constantly thinking about future gains or past losses. So I put the date in my hand down and focused on the date in my mouth. It was the sweetest and the tastiest thing I had ever eaten in my life. It completely satiated me to such a level, if I ever got to eat dates again, I would be at peace. When I eat like this, I am not grasping for the next bite. I am completely satisfied with whatever I have eaten. And if I live my life like this, I will no longer be afraid of dying. If we eat each bite as if it is our last, we can enjoy it completely. Similarly, if we live knowing that death could come anytime, we could really live our lives. If you want to live, learn how to die. Every day, practice to live in the present moment. Calm your grasping and passion until you can befriend death. Uncle continued his passionate monologue until he started coughing. So how do I start and when do I start? I asked. Start now. Start while driving when you're going home. So it shows that simple experiences in our lives can teach such profound lessons. Uncle learned to live while eating a date. He had this profound realization. And how he connects it to end in human life sense, it's depicted as death. It's amazing. So Aryan continues his work with this company as a consultant. But here too, he faces setbacks. He follows his heart and acts according to his own values, which come again at odds with the political values of the company. and he gets fired from there as well. Even though he has grown quite a bit because of his conversation with his uncle, he still hasn't let go of need for validation from society. So I'm going to read some parts just after he gets fired from his consulting gig, how he feels and how he comes to terms with situation. After the discussion, the feelings of societal rejection flooded my consciousness. Don't run away from life, pleasure or pain. Live this moment with all your attention. And he thinks that because of what has happened to him, he would be judged negatively by his peers or society. So he asks himself, but in reality, nobody has the time to think about me. People are suffering in their own lives, in their own ways, probably asking the same questions. Is it possible that I judge myself too often, too unfairly, and too harshly? Could it be that I don't consider myself worthy? Is it possible that it's not the world that has rejected me, but rather I who have rejected myself? Then I looked back at how I have acted all my life. The motivation behind most of my actions has been to seek acceptance and validation from others. When I received it, I felt satisfied. When I didn't, I felt dissatisfied. My whole life, I have lived a lie. I have acted with wrong motivation. If I reject myself, how can I expect others to accept me? What is the value of their acceptance if they too might be struggling with self acceptance? If I have rejected myself, how can I love myself? While I may have selfish desires serving my ego, that can't be love. Everyone needs love to live. If we don't love ourselves, we naturally seek it externally, in relationships, friendships, and validation from peers and strangers. But external validation doesn't feel like true love. What does true love even feel like? Then he remembers his time with his uncle the previous night, where they shared a very profound moment. And then he talked to himself. If I felt unconditional love last night, then why did I feel such sorrow and loss afterwards? Is it because I fear I will never feel that way again? While I'm afraid of losing my uncle, I'm also afraid of never being loved unconditionally again. If one cannot love oneself conditionally, can they truly love others the same way? Does loving oneself mark the beginning of loving all? Is this the love Uncle talks about? Buddhists speak of dropping the burden of ego. I now see that ego is a construction of self-perceptions. So am I judging not my real self, but my ego? But this ego is not me. It's a limited dimensional projection of me. Could self-acceptance be the start of letting go of this ego? Suddenly, the world started making sense to me. My mind started getting clarity. There was no suffering in my circumstances. The suffering was in my perception of the circumstances. It seemed I had been living my life through a virtual reality headset, and I just took it off. Maybe this is what Hindus call Maya. I felt liberated, as if I had dropped a huge burden that I had been carrying all my life. Everything made sense. Everything was perfect. I felt peace. I was ready to engage with the world without the expectation of taking and exploiting for my ego's selfish desire. So you can see that initially he was feeling anxious and scared. And what we normally seek when we feel like that is escape. We call somebody, we talk to them, and we expect them to show pity on us. That's validation. So instead, what Aryan ends up doing is inspecting his own consciousness. And he inspects his behavior throughout his life. And he sees through Maya and drops his ego and achieves peace. He lives in that present moment. There's a profound realization that I had, which is a quote in the book. And this is what Uncle tells Aryan. The way you live this moment is how you will live the rest of your life. People say that they have regrets about past, but there's no point of having regret in the past. You have this moment, and if you are at complete peace at this moment, the past does not matter. And this is the realization that Aryan has in the book. There are more plots in the book. There are more lessons in the book. The book, as I'm told, is a page turner. So I would highly recommend reading it. But this was a small snippet from the book. I hope you liked it. The book is available on Amazon in Kindle paperback as well as Audible. And with this, I take your leave. Have a great day.